Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Hey, it's Akizio here, and today I'll be reacting to A Commissar Story Part 1, Avathon 4 by Old Man Reacts. This one was requested a long time ago, sorry to take so long. But better late than never, right? So, without further ado, let's see how the story of the Commissar goes. And don't forget to check out Old Man's channels. He has a reaction channel, well, and a lore channel.
Hello, Commissar. How are you on this Emperor-blessed day?
Hospitaler, my guest is here. I'll be in my quarters.
A guest, he says.
Understood.
I wonder if this is when he met the Necron.
Hello,
Commissar?
Jeffries. It's happening again. It must be that time of year. Don't get me wrong, Jeffries. It happens all the time. It just gets worse now. At the bottom of every amasec, when I wake up and turn on the lights, a flash or a reflection off a shine surface, it just gets worse. Do you remember when it used to startle me? I was in the middle of a staff meeting 3 years after it happened. I was in a command level meeting about a Tyranid incursion. The lights were dim. We were watching some holovid. The vid ended and then someone flicked a switch and bam. The eyes were right there watching me. Only for an instant, less than the time it takes to really blink. My bolter was already out of its holster though. That required some explaining, Jeffries. You'd be surprised how many times a day I see those eyes now. Anything
War flashbacks?
can remind me. Anything can bring me back. Facing my demons has never been a problem, but this is just, well, torture.
Facing his demons, I assume both literally and figuratively, given, the warp is super hell.
When I got the assignment, I thought it was a joke. Avathon 4? I thought for absolute sure that the Lord Commissar had misspoken. I even remember thinking maybe he meant Agathon, but no, he was completely serious, Jeffries. I had never even heard of the system. I had barely even heard of the Varnus subsector, but the only times I had heard of it was only in passing. I thought I had done something wrong, that I had come up short in some titanic measure when I was reading the report. But how, with my marks from the scholar, with the merit of Taralos I wore on my chest, with the personal commendation of the Lord Commissar himself that was given to me the day he put on my sash? The answer I got made the situation no better. The regimental commissar on Avathon 4 was dying, and I was the most junior despite everything else.
Oh, bright star from the Schola Progenium, with many accolades, end up in some backwater deployment, and that's only happening because he needs to replace someone who's literally dying of probably old age. That's gotta be some kind of insult, to be honest.
So there it was, and there I was on the way to replace him. Jeffries, I hated everything about the assignment. From the reasons to the reports, even the ride on the civilian bulk hauler to get there. The crew avoided me like the plague, and with my mood I didn't care. Avathon 4, population 5 million. Agri-world, primary export grains. They had even left the secondary export field blank. No history of uprisings or conflicts, no wars it was involved in, no civil unrest even. And to make matters even worse for my mood, if it could have gotten worse at that point, the planet only maintained a quarter of an infantry regiment for the Imperial Guard and less than 25,000 PDF troopers. I was born in a hive, Jeffries. All of the time in my life had been spent breathing in the air of the hives, surrounded by spires and the cast of lumen globes, and here I was on the way to a planet where the biggest city held less than 30,000 civilians. I never considered how beautiful the world was. No, I saw it as something ugly. A prison for me for a decade or longer if I was forgotten here by the Commissariat.
As some of the Drukari's slaves might say, eh, eh, they're still in a cage, you just can't see the walls.
But it was beautiful, a floating orb of like green and gold cut with these pools of blue, the sort of artistry a painter would spend their entire life struggling to capture even in a fragment of its wonder. To me at that moment, though, it was the representation of everything ugly.
You know, that's kind of funny when you consider that, and I'm sure if the Commissar knew about me making this comparison, he might be in danger of having a stroke. But it's kind of funny how there's been a couple times where we're seeing a world that hasn't been essentially destroyed via industrial activity has actually caused some groups of guardsmen who had defected to the Tau Empire to be willing to fight to the last man for the Tau because they valued how different the environment itself was just that much. To see forests and breathe clean air.
Jeffries, my earliest memories had been watching bulk haulers landing on one of the 4 starports I could see out of the small window of my own hab block. Now I was going to step into that city of 30,000 Ceres after touching down on the only starport on the planet. When I landed and I inhaled the air, the clean air of that world, it somehow felt oppressive. That's when I first saw them. That's when I first saw the eyes. The one they belonged to surprised me because how does someone as young as him ever get into the Imperial Guard? He was so young then, Jeffries. And he seemed optimistic until his eyes met mine. The first thing I did to that guardsman was glare my contempt at him, and apparently he wasn't used to that. In fact, the honored guard that had met me all straightened like they had been hit by an electro whip. Lack of discipline. Or so I thought at the time. When I met the dying Commissar I was replacing, I never even bothered to make note of their name, but I was struck by just how relaxed he was. How familiar he was with the guardsmen. By the throne, he was addressing some of them on a first-name basis. I couldn't even fathom what I was witnessing. Insult to injury, there I am, standing in full-dress uniform during the change of the Commissar's command, and instead of pomp and circumstance, I get tossed the keys to what the Commissar referred to as the Bane Blade. It was a damn Tauros. Every other regimental commissar I had ever heard of at least had access to a beat-up Chimera. I got a dune runner that looked like it had been through the Siege of Rax twice and had been on the wrong side of an Earthshaker bombardment.
Oh, that thing must have been so rickety that he then, by the sounds of it, I get the feeling that if a tech adept took a look at that thing, they'd be impressed by the endurance of Taurox's machine spirit. But also, the fact that he mentions that the old commissar actually knew some of his men on a first name basis and was that familiar with them and relaxed. That is that is something very rare to hear about. In fact, it sounds to me like that commissar's leadership style was was less about making his own soldiers fear him more than they feared the enemy, and more about actually motivating them and you know being maybe not quite a friend to them, but being one one that they would respect and admire, both as a commanding officer and as a person in general.
So there it was. I was now technically the senior commissar of a regiment, the Avathon Rifle Corps, which would have been a high mark for someone as young as I was if no one really looked at the particulars. If someone did, it was almost shameful. I held commissarial duty over a quarter regiment that hadn't deployed in over 3,000 years. No one is coming to take 2,500 guardsmen from an agri-world that is so close to so many other hive worlds. No one's requisitioning men and putting the effort needed when drawing 1,000 times that many is less than a week's warp's transit away. No one's gonna put in that effort. That didn't matter to me though. 2 hours after I hung my uniforms in my quarters in what passed for a regimental headquarters in Ceres, I called for an assembly.
Oh, it sounds like the guardsmen on Avathon 4 might also potentially be rather soft, so to speak, due to their their quite good history of compliance. Like, no uprisings, no major invasions, and also the fact that no one's gonna put in the effort to even recruit from them. Hmm.
These troops could hate me, but I couldn't care less now. I might be stuck on this pit of a planet, but I refuse to fail in my duty. I drilled them. I drilled them in march and firing and combat simulations. I drilled them in uniform hand-to-hand combat. I can count at least 10 times in the first 6 months, Jeffries, that I almost shot the regimental commander for arguing about how hard I was pressing. I would not be found wanting when the chance came to get off of this rock. I saw the eyes a lot then. Sometimes they were exhausted, and at first they were just bitter. Do you want one? Of course you don't. I thought the guardsmen hadn't been put through their proper paces in a long time, and I ignored protests from everyone, the regimental staff, even the planetary governor who objected to me ordering a 10-mile march during Harvest Day. Apparently, he had expected me to march the entire regiment into Ceres and then cut them loose on a 2-day pass to celebrate the holiday. But then it happened. It happened slowly, but it began to happen.
Oh wow. It sounds like he was like he was trying to well discipline them as he saw it, and probably ends up making an enemy of the entire regiment in the process due to all the cultural norms that he's breaking.
I came to the end of a file and realized I had nothing else to write or file, nothing else to report, nothing else to do. I remember the realization of what it did to me, Jeffries. For the next week, you want to know what I did? Besides drill the men, all I did was polish and clean my uniforms. I think after that week I could have been awarded the Star of Terror for diligence in uniform standards. And then that week turned into 2, and then 3.
Well, it sounds like the Mordian Iron Guard definitely would have been impressed at least.
Tasks like recruiting a new guardsman into the ranks or a promotion, that I used to hate for how boring it was became these little islands of relief from the lack of something to focus myself on. It was then, and I was in the second hour of polishing my boots, in the third week of polishing my boots, that a knock came on my door. It was that young guardsman I had seen when I took my first step onto this world. He looked fit now. He had put on muscle. In fact, he was in the top 5% of the Avathon rifles in every regard. I knew this because, well, Jeffries, I spent days upon days polishing my boots and buttons. How much of that time do you think I just spent researching personnel files for no other reason than to do something with them? Up until about 5 minutes before he entered my office, if someone asked me what he asked me, I would have made absolutely certain that no one in the next 6 generations of his family tree would have made such a request again. Jeffries, I'm telling you, I would have made that question such a memory. It would be told every sanguinala by half the regiment's grandchildren. I would have had a statue erected in my name with the verbal diatribe that I would have unleashed in the town square of Ceres. He looked at me and asked if I would attend his wedding. At first, I wanted to jump out of my chair and throw my boot at his head, but no, a week later, there I was, attending a wedding, standing in a field of grain, surrounded by people in his family and his wife's family, who had all heard about the regimental commissar, and who all wanted to meet me. I tried to maintain my image the best I could, but then one of his civilian friends got up to speak. He raised a glass and made a toast to the guardsman and to the guardsman's new wife, Angela, and said, if he doesn't do right by you, you know who to go to. And then he points to me, and by the throne, I can't believe what I did next. With everyone in the wedding looking at me, I reach down and start tapping the grip of my bolt gun, and I'm glaring daggers at the guardsman. And everybody laughs, and even I start grinning. Jeffries, it was this place, it was this world. I began to understand why the commissar I had replaced was so relaxed here. This was a place that war forgot, that the time and rush of life seemed to crawl to us slow. I didn't stop drilling the regiment, but by that point they were approaching Cadian standards of physical fitness and preparedness, but I did stop with the other things. The first year after the wedding saw me actually beginning to enjoy the work.
What a wonder it does for people in the setting of 40k if you just give them some time, or rather a lot of time, to just, well, get some relaxation alongside their work and actually be people and not be worked like cogs in a machine.
When the next harvest day happened, I actually marched the entire regiment to the center of town, and with the regimental commander grinning like an idiot next to me, I told the whole regiment not to come back for 3 days. Of course, we got mobilization orders, but...
Oh wow, he didn't just give them the 2 days the planetary governor wanted last year, but a whole extra day too. looks like the world's starting to get to him. And knowing that this is set in 40k, I am afraid of how something's going to go horribly wrong.
Jeffries, the first time a general mobilization order came to my desk, I got so excited, but these orders came with the same regularity. At least once every few months or so, and I had been told they had been coming for years, decades, centuries even. The mobilization would get called, report statuses would be transferred, and then nothing would come of it. The guardsmen barely even knew the order had been given because the order for deployment would never follow it. Yeah, every once in a while a new commissar like me or a new regimental commander would come in, get the mobilization order, and actually act on it. They only stopped doing it after the 4th or 5th time. Even I gave it the 6th. But then I stopped doing more than giving it a glance. just to see where troops were gonna go and what sort of enemy they were gonna fight, if even that was there. For 6 years, Jeffries, I was on that planet following a routine of drilling followed by hours of simply trying to fill time. You'd be shocked how much you can invent for yourself to do when there's so little to occupy yourself with. There's only so many times you can inventory the planet's military storehouse. There's only so many hours you can dedicate to cleaning and polishing. And when your guardsmen are in such a state of readiness, there's only so much more you can do to make them more ready for a war that will seemingly never have to fight. So I started walking and talking. I started taking an interest in my guardsmen and in their personal lives. Started off plain enough, like what drills do they enjoy and which ones they don't. How you feel about the two types of las rifle you use, the Galaxy pattern or the MM32 that some local Forge World had sent about 20 years ago. I even learned some of their first names, though thank the God Emperor I never caught myself using them. Some of the guardsmen even started calling me this local term like boss or bossman. After 6 years on the planet, Jeffries, I didn't want to leave. These people I had considered rustics and unworthy of my time were now... Jeffries, this is what the Emperor wanted for us all. Faces that weren't drawn from back-breaking labor in the manufactorum, but lit up from sunlight and time spent in open, clean air. Spirits that weren't crushed under clouds of smog and the looming threat of an endless war that just constantly. I walked the streets and the fields of what was called an agri-world, but Avathon 4 was a paradise. I lived there. I loved it. 4 more years and I would be up for reassignment. But what man in his right mind would ever leave a place like this? I had seen war already. I've traveled the stars. I would stay. I wanted to stay in this place that was alien to everything I had ever known. But it was to this place that I now belonged. The guardsman had a child, and I was there at her 3rd birthday with a little girl demanding to be picked up, surrounded by my guardsmen. And that's when the runner came. Another mobilization order, and I almost chewed out the private who brought it for wasting my time. The first line of text completely dissuaded me from that.
Oh no.
The Scholar does not teach you not to feel fear. It teaches you how to bury it beneath duty, how to manage it so it doesn't show to your guardsmen. The Scholar teaches potential commissars to wall themselves off to such emotion. I felt my training kick back in as I read the mobilization report, but the change to my outward personality let everyone there know something was wrong instantaneously. I had gone from smiling and laughing to as cold and distant as I had been the first day I had arrived. At the top of the order, in bold print, were the words, "Invasion imminent."
Oh no. I shudder to imagine what's gonna show up. Especially knowing that, given what the 40k universe is like, pretty much anything that shows up to invade would be terrible. Like, I'm... Like... Like whether it's orcs, chaos, Eldar, just... Or I honestly struggle to think of anything that if you say throw it onto many other their science fiction settings wouldn't be considered a just or just something horrifying to deal with. As is often the case where people joke about if a guardsman from 40k were sent into the Star Wars universe, that they treat it like a vacation practically, compared to the things they have to fight back home. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this with me. It was quite fun to watch. I'm looking forward to reacting to the next parts of the story. You should definitely check out Old Man's channel. And if you enjoyed watching with me, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. But until next time, ta-ta!